Today, right here on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel, we're talking 5 Buffalo Trace Bourbon alternatives. Let's do this. Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. So I want to touch on this. We get asked all the time from the people who can't find Buffalo Trace, what are some alternatives to not being able to find Buffalo Trace? What should I find? Well, we're going to hit you with 5 of those today. So without further ado, let's get into this. So right out of the gate, we're going with another Sazerac brand, Barton 1792 small batch. This for me is a great alternative. Again, it's under the same Sazerac umbrella, offers a lot of the similar profile and notes that you're going to get from the standard Buffalo Trace itself. So for me, oftentimes when people say, I can't find Buffalo Trace, what is it that you'd recommend? My default immediately goes right to 1792 small batch. So there you have it, my number 1 on the list of Buffalo Trace alternatives. Again, 1792 small batch. What's coming up next? Old Forester Signature 100. For me, this is a bourbon I overall tend to recommend to an awful lot of people. I think this really hits a lot of people's kind of palate profile, what it is that they really appreciate in a bourbon very well. So this tends to offer up some of those darker, maybe chocolate, heavier fruit notes. Great, baking spice on this. Again, a little more oak that would be on this than maybe the standard Buffalo Trace. But overall, for me, the Old Forester Signature 100 is a great default bourbon. If you're unable to find just the standard Buffalo Trace, this for me, again, is a fantastic bourbon and one that I, again, find myself recommending to all sorts of people. Again, whether you're new to bourbon, if you're already into it, or if somehow you see this on the shelves and you just continuously, walk past it, overlook it, I would say don't do that any longer. Make sure you take a look at the Old Forester Signature 100. So here we are coming in at number 3. And again, not in any particular order. This just happens to be number 3 on the list. Russell's Reserve 10-year. Again, another fantastic shelf bourbon that is just about everywhere. So I think, again, for the people who are unable to find the standard Buffalo Trace bourbon, the Russell's Reserve 10-year, very similar in price at right around that $25, maybe upwards of $30, $35. But again, it's readily available. It's all over the place. And for anyone who, again, can't find Buffalo Trace, I think this is a fantastic alternative. It offers up, again, a lot of those sweeter profiles. This, again, as Russell's, there is a slight nuttiness that kind of comes through on it. But again, the vanillas and the caramels, very typical or standard kind of bourbon notes. But again, I think it fits that same kind of profile for people that are enjoying the Buffalo Trace bourbon and just can't happen to find it. It happens to a lot of us where the allocation, again, of Buffalo Trace is out there. Not many of us, unfortunately, are able to get our hands on a nice daily sipper. But again, Russell's Reserve 10-year is another fantastic alternative if you can't find Buffalo Trace. Coming in at number 4 on the list for me, again, this is going to be the Maker's 46. So again, we're shifting a little bit in terms of the mash bill, with this being a wheated bourbon profile. This is the Maker's 46, so this is finished with the French oak staves. So again, I felt that this was another strong contender for an alternative to Buffalo Trace from the standpoint of its sweeter profile. So oftentimes in talking with several people who enjoy Buffalo Trace, they seem to enjoy it because of that standard kind of sweetness. Well, with the French oak stave, it's definitely going to offer up that sweeter kind of profile. So again, with the French oak staves, you're going to get a little bit more of those kind of pie crust, lots of the vanillas, caramels, a little bit of kind of that creme brulee, kind of maybe vanilla custard type of effect to it. So again, like I had mentioned before, as an alternative to Buffalo Trace, the sweetness that you get from the Maker's 46 offers up a tremendous, not only value, again, it's just about everywhere. And that's one thing consistent with really all of these bourbons that I'm going to show you today is you can go, generally speaking, to just about any liquor store and find all of these sitting there on the shelves. So again, it makes it as a really fantastic alternative, considering you can go to your local liquor store and there it is sitting on the shelves. So for me, coming in at number 4 is the Maker's 46. Again, I think it's a fantastic alternative to the Buffalo Trace Bourbon. Coming in at number 5, last but definitely not least, is the Four Roses Small Batch. Again, another bourbon that lends itself to being on the sweeter side. Again, readily available, very similar in proof. And again, I think it's a fantastic alternative to not being able to find the standard Buffalo Trace Bourbon. Again, like I mentioned before, this is going to be a little slightly sweeter type of profile. Oftentimes with Four Roses, you do pick up those really nice vanillas, caramels, slight kind of floral notes that you get a lot of times with Four Roses Small Batch. I felt that this was a really nice kind of comparable bourbon to the Buffalo Trace. If again, you're unable to find Buffalo Trace in your area, you don't have to look any further than, for me, in my opinion, you know, the standard Four Roses Small Batch. Again, I think it offers up a tremendous value, similar proof, similar in nature kind of profile to it. And again, that's one thing that kind of working all the way through the list is all of these, again, like I mentioned before, are going to be readily available for the most part. Again, price point on these are going to be very similar to a standard Buffalo Trace bourbon, you know, at or around maybe that $30, $35 price point. So none of these are going to be, you know, anything that's going to break the bank. Stay tried and true within, again, that price range. Similar-ish profiles on all of these. You're not going to match it 100%, you know, for the most part. You know, but again, these are designed to be alternatives to Buffalo Trace bourbons. So there you have it. My number 5 on the list is the Four Roses Small Batch. So there you go. Here are my 5 bourbons that I think are alternatives to not being able to find a standard Buffalo Trace bourbon. More importantly, is there something that was left off the list? If so, make sure you leave a comment below. For anyone coming back, watching the video, reading the comments, I'm sure they're going to appreciate your feedback as to other suggestions that you guys may have. So I think it's just as important for me to do the video that it is for you to make sure you're leaving comments below on the videos. On your way out, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all of those things, greatly appreciated. There you go, guys. Here are my 5 bourbons, again, that are alternatives to not being able to find Buffalo Trace bourbon. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. And remember, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers.